Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Hello, welcome to Media Watch. I'm Linton Besser. And tonight we stand at a precipice, the world watching with trepidation the fallout of an unprecedented US strike on the Islamic Republic of Iran. Yesterday, news Donald Trump had bowed to the pressure and fired bunker-busting munitions at multiple sites in Iran, said to house Iranian nuclear facilities and fissile material. By Sunday afternoon, the first of Iran's retaliation, a major salvo of missiles targeting the Jewish state.
They're interceptors. Yep. All right. And so we're going to get inside here. Stay with us, Trace.
The US bombing campaign, dubbed Midnight Hammer, came just 2 days into the 2 weeks Trump had publicly flagged as a potential window in which Tehran might snatch a diplomatic exit. So, was the world's media being used by a cunning, if mercurial, president to catch the Iranians off guard?
His 2-week deadline appears to have been something of a ruse, perhaps intended to lull Iranian officials into believing they had time to talk their way out of it.
Since Israel began its ballistic missile campaign against Iran 10 days ago, the world's media has been marshalling resources to meet the moment.
Even though the missile didn't hit this property directly, it hit just a short distance away. All of the windows in the house have been completely blown out.
But there were few equivalent pictures from inside Iran in the immediate aftermath of the US attacks, with internet blackouts and almost no independent journalists on the ground. The vacuum being filled on social media with war pictures from the front lines of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and images many months old, now among those being fact-checked by BBC Verify.
Let me make it easy for everyone. Every single video and image that is currently going viral online, claiming to show the aftermath of US strikes on Iran's Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan nuclear sites is false.
And in this fog of war, it appears Channel 9 might already have taken a wrong turn, reporting a promise of retaliation from Iran's leader.
Americans should expect greater damage and blows than ever before in history.
It was quite the scoop, actually, because it was missed by every other major press organisation on the planet, including CNN and the BBC. And as far as we can tell, he had made no such public comments at all about the bombing. In fact, the regime exercises tight control over public communications across Iran by clamping down on the internet and the free press. Instead, according to a US-funded Persian news service,
the Islamic Republic's state-run media is broadcasting scattered news from within the country, and the rest is a bombardment of news and propaganda about the effects of Iran's attacks on Israel.
Israel also knows the importance of propaganda in conflict, having blocked the world's media from entering Gaza for the past 21 months. And on Tuesday last week, it struck Iranian state TV. To get some sense of what is happening inside Iran, the ABC's Middle East correspondent, Alison Horn, in the midst of her maternity leave, reactivated her contacts inside the country via encrypted message.
It was already hard to talk with people on the ground in Iran. Foreign journalists are rarely allowed in.
But in pockets of connectivity, I've reached some of my contacts.
This American attack, I can't stop my tears. This is the war. Nobody knows what will happen next.
So, what does the bombing mean for Australia? And has the media done enough to ask tough questions of the Albanese government? The ABC's Melbourne radio host, Raph Epstein, thinks not.
There has not been nearly enough questioning. What have our intelligence agencies asked of America's intelligence agencies? What is going across the desk of the National Security Committee of Cabinet? We're not even asking questions about whether or not it's illegal. We're not even asking questions about what the intelligence is.
24 hours later, the Foreign Minister fielded these very questions on ABC News Breakfast.
Do you know if any American facilities in Australia, for example Pine Gap, were used to help carry out these strikes?
James, again, we don't comment on intelligence matters.
In these earliest days of this dangerous new escalation, some of what we'll be told, as is so often the case in war, will be wrong, either innocently inaccurate or deliberately deceptive, which adds all the more gravity to the duty of the press to provide sound information and, yes, to be asking the right questions. Because whatever trust the media has banked in times of peace, it cashes out in times of war. And now, from fast missiles to a fast car on the back streets of Melbourne.
It was pinched from a hospital car park, triggering a wild pursuit across the northern suburbs.
Emergency services, what address do you need the police?
Hey mate, I'm on a pursuit of a stolen car.
A fed-up driver taking the law into his own hands was the lead item on Seven's Melbourne bulletin earlier this month, and was also given a spot in Seven's evening bulletins in Sydney, Brisbane, Hobart, Adelaide and even Perth. This foot-to-the-floor performance by the car thief was also given a splash on Seven's website.
Fast and furious!
The victims of this theft had been visiting an elderly relative on her deathbed when they returned to the car park to discover their prized Holden Commodore missing. But more drama ahead. A set of AirPods left in the centre console turned into a tracking beacon. The chase took another turn when an accomplice driving a Subaru performed blocking manoeuvres as if at Albert Park.
They kept losing sight of their Commodore, but finally found it empty, dumped in a court. They retrieved it, fearing the thief might still be nearby.
Victims of crime forced to play cops and robbers. What a yarn. With John Theos delivering for Channel 7 the killer grab.
We had no support from the police, so we had to get our car back.
No support from the police? We wondered whether it might just be worth checking that one. A Victoria Police spokesperson told us the owner of the car was warned
to go back to their house and not to follow the vehicle. Victoria Police made 4 attempts to contact the family to cease pursuing the vehicle. On each of those occasions, the call was unanswered.
In addition, the police claimed they located the car and in all made 7 calls to the car theft victims. We've also been told that 000 operators issued their usual advice to the driver to not put himself at risk. 7 did ask questions of the police, but when the cops failed to meet its deadline, the network pushed ahead anyway, deciding its car pursuit story was too hot to hold. So, what did Victoria Police's statement say when it finally arrived the following day?
The victims were told to cease pursuing the vehicle for their own safety and that of other motorists in the vicinity.
It also explained that after a risk assessment, the police had decided
not to pursue the vehicle due to safety concerns for other road users, and there was the capability to track the vehicle.
And what about that rather enthusiastic driving in pursuit of the stolen car? John and Costa Theos would not say who was driving the car, and we don't know either. They also declined to give us the raw footage. But whomever was driving, Channel 7 snippets appear to show the car accelerating through a tight gap, overtaking up the inside of the left lane and driving across the wrong side of a roundabout. And what about these colourful descriptions of the escapade given to 7 by John Theos?
I'm thinking he's going to clip a tree or clip a car, and then there would have been mayhem.
He just drove like a maniac and put everyone at risk.
We risked our lives. We had the chase.
So, what hard questions did 7's Paul Dowsley put to John and Costa Theos about their part in the affair? Apparently not a one. And how do we know? Because we asked John and Costa Theos ourselves.
He was a true gentleman. Nothing hard, no. They wanted the story and didn't go any further than that, and I'm happy with that.
I'm sure you are, John. John Theos and his son said 7 paid no money for the footage, denied the police had told them to stop the pursuit, and said their car had not gone over the speed limit. Costa Theos said the pursuit only occurred because the police had told them,
"We don't have the resources. You guys have to go and get it." They had more important cases. Once we found the car, they said, "We can't help you. If you guys want to go and get it, it's up to you."
Funnily enough, there's now a touch of remorse creeping in about contacting a TV station in the first place.
My son should not have called Channel 7 because all of a sudden it's about us and not the morons out there committing crimes.
Indeed. We sent the 7 story to the founder of the Australian Road Safety Foundation, who told us
there could have been multiple people killed that day. Do we need to give this sort of thing airtime?
We asked 7 News to defend the tone of its fast and furious news story, why it failed to ask tough questions of the father and son from whom it had secured the dashcam footage, and why it failed to update its online version of the story with the Victoria Police statement. A spokesperson told us we had missed the point entirely.
Our reporter conducted a respectful interview with a grieving father and son the day after their car was stolen from Sunshine Hospital, where they had just said their final goodbyes to their much-loved mother and grandmother, who had passed away.
I'm not so removed from the thrill of the hunt to suggest 7 should not have run that dashcam footage or publish a story, but to have done so without any tough questions of those who took the law into their own hands and without a single word from the cops was to glorify street justice in its thirst for ratings, and it was an abrogation of 7's responsibilities to the community it serves. And now to the courthouse steps in downtown Melbourne and one of the city's more distinguished denizens.
Bailed and beaming, Melbourne's most notorious gangland figure.
Tony, how does freedom feel?
Set free after 18 years behind bars.
Yes, that pillar of the community, Antonius Mokbel, after a little time away, floated from the Victorian Supreme Court into the soft embrace of the press.
His supporters cheered and clapped as he made his way through the media pack.
Let's go, come on, boys, please.
Tony Mokbel, one of the few survivors of Melbourne's deadly underworld war of the 2000s, whose life has been depicted in 2 separate television shows, but who was perhaps most famous for escaping police on a luxury yacht, then assuming this rather cunning disguise, has long been a media darling. And this has been a good year for Fat Tony because the one-time mob boss sued the Victorian government for a wee touch-up he received in Barwon Prison and last week won a handsome return.
Big $1 million wad for Big Wig Mokbel. Exclusive.
Freed drug czar Tony Mokbel has been awarded a $1 million payout by the Allen government over his brutal bashing inside Barwon Prison in 2019.
It was a vicious prison yard lashing that left Mokbel with a traumatic brain injury and what he claimed was a steep run of medical and legal bills. Mokbel successfully sued Victoria's prison system for failing to protect him from 2 members of a Pacific Islander gang who, turning away from a jailhouse birthday celebration, lined him up for a battering.
The award money was paid to Mokbel after he sued the state over a frenzied attack on him by 2 inmates, who punched him unconscious, then stabbed him with a shiv and kicked him as he lay on the ground.
And what provoked this near-deadly attack? The Herald Sun explained it had come
just days after a media report that he had become an enforcer behind bars.
A media report? If only we knew who ran it.
Tony the Enforcer. Exclusive.
Mokbel busts jail extortion racket, proving he's a big wig behind bars.
Yes, a little detail escaped the notice of our friends at the Hun. The so-called media report, which was published just 48 hours before the bashing, was its own. It was a serious story, which also reported allegations that Mokbel had
recently intervened in a prison standover scheme, disrupting an extortion racket run by a group of Pacific Island inmates.
And which had Barwon Prison authorities in a panic.
Prison officers warned Tony Mokbel he was in danger before he was stabbed, the day after a media article that extolled Mr Mokbel as a feared prison bigwig and a top enforcer.
The Herald Sun has been described in its own pages as the Bible inside Victoria's prisons. So when it labelled Mokbel a jail yard heavyweight, it was always going to make waves. But don't take our word for it. Here's the finding of the Victorian County Court.
I am satisfied that this offending was committed as a direct response to the Herald Sun article claim that Mr. Mokbel held a top dog position in the jail.
One of the gang members who savaged Mokbel had even used the Herald Sun's own words.
You think you were an enforcer? Well, you are not, you.
We asked the newspaper why it failed to identify its own little role in this rotten sequence of events, but strangely, we didn't hear back. In all matters crime, the Hun is a force of nature, with a roster of sources scattered through the ranks of the police and prison system, and shows little hesitation in using these snitches to name and shame in a bid to hold the powerful to account. But it seems there's one big institution in Victoria that the tabloid hasn't the intestinal fortitude to identify: itself, which I reckon is pretty gutless. And that's all from us tonight. Be sure to check us out on ABC iView as well as X, YouTube and Facebook. You can find full statements on our website, and don't forget to send us your tips. I'll see you next week.